Hey everyone, welcome to the fifth video of the SAT Foundation series. In this one we're going to talk about the basics of the critical reading. So basically what the section is, what to expect on it, what to see. In the actual videos we're going to do a video on the reading passages and a video on the sentence completions. In those sections, in those videos, we're going to talk more about the types of questions you'll see, how to approach them, and we'll do some practice problems. In this, it's just very general. So first off, let's start with a discussion of how long is the reading section, what can you expect. So the breakdown of the sections are three, as you might have expected from one of the earlier videos. You've got two 25-minute, 24-question sections, and you've got one 20-minute, 19-question section. Now this is also itself, the number of questions is broken down into both critical reading questions, and that's kind of the passage-based reading where you have to read a passage and answer questions based off of what you've read. And then you've also got your sentence completions, which is very vocabulary focused. You've got to read a sentence and then put in the relevant or appropriate words from the choices into the blanks that best fits into that sentence based off of what the sentence is trying to say. So now that I've showed you basically the breakdown of the sections, oh, one other thing. You have three normally, unless of course you have four when you have the experimental. Now, again, just like in the math section, you may not have the experimental, you don't really know which section is going to be experimental until you get there. But at the very least, you're going to have these three. So let's talk now about the key technique that I believe runs through the entire critical reading section, whether you're talking about the passage-based reading, whether you're talking about the sentence completions. The key technique is the same, and that technique is come up with your own ideas first. And by own ideas, I mean your own ideas for the answer to the question that you're reading, that you're doing. What you don't want to do not go right to the choices. What do I mean by that? Well, it'll become clearer when we actually do some practice problems, but for now, what that means is you need to, when you read, you're going to read the question first, of course, then you're going to go to the reading, whether it's a sentence completion or whether it's a passage-based reading question. You're going to go to the relevant part of the passage or relevant part of the page, and you're going to read. And then before you go to the answer choices, you're going to come up with your own ideas first, your own answers. Okay? What you do not want to do, as well, is sit around justifying answer choices. And what I mean by that is you don't want to sit around saying to yourself, oh, well, A could be right because of this, and B could be right because of this. That is the quickest trip to falling into the traps that they're kind of laying for you. They expect you to do that, and that's what you don't want to do. So instead, what you want to do is, you want to eliminate choices based off of what you've read, based off of and based off of coming up with your own ideas. So you want to look for reasons to get rid of choices, not look for reasons to justify. And this will become clearer when we look at examples, what I mean by this and why this is so important. So the final piece of this puzzle that kind of ties it all together is, if it's not supported by what's on the page, it's not correct. So in theory, you should be able to pick out the section of each page that gives you the answer to each question. So if you're doing a number 13, for instance, and you get an answer, you should be able to point to the text that they give you, whether it's a sentence completion or whether it's a reading passage, as evidence for why you've picked that choice. It's never going to be something solely out of your head. So it's going to have some support, needs evidence from the page. If it didn't, then ETS or College Board could get into a lot of arguments with people who would say, well, why is this the answer? Well, ETS and College Board can now point to a particular question and say, well, the reason why this is the answer is that it says this on this part of the page. So that's what you've got to get into the habit of doing. Find what's on the page to support your answer. And then this also kind of relates to the fact that you're picking the best answer, not the right answer. And we'll get into this distinction a little bit more when we actually look at some practice problems. Okay, so How many to omit? This is an issue of pacing, which is what we discussed with the math. Here, it's less, unlike the math, it's less set in stone. There are going to be no, omit this number of questions in this section, omit this number of questions in this section. Because the fact of the matter is that with a lot of the reading questions, you should be able to eliminate choices on almost every question. Maybe not in the sentence completions, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But certainly in the reading passages, you should be able to at least eliminate, 1, 2, or 3 choices per, which means if you can do that, you got to shoot out a guess. So I'm not going to give you any general guidelines on how many omit in general. And also the other reason is, as we'll talk about for the reading passages, there's no order of difficulty for the reading passage questions. So it's very hard to say, oh, okay, do these number of questions because you're doing easies, mediums. We can't fall back on that like we can with the math. But nonetheless, even though we don't have this pacing guideline, there will be some guidelines, especially with the sentence completions and even with the reading, on how to approach the questions and how to make the best use of our time. So if you like this video, please rate, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like more information and more SAT help, check out reasonprep.com, my site. Alright, let's go on to video number 6.